So welcome to this webinar. My name is Nicolaj Højer Nielsen, and together with the team from PreSeed Ventures, we're hosting this startup talk, which is part of the series called PreSeed Aacademy. Today we're going to talk about what I personally think is a very important topic, customer churn, and how to reduce that now in this time of a global crisis. I'll do a very brief intro to the subject, and then we'll go to the main speakers afterwards. So you can say, why is churn important? And churn is extremely important because it typically defines your long-term growth. If you have churn, and churn here is defined as customers leaving your business, it'll be very hard for you to keep up the high growth rate you normally have. So normally as a startup, you are able to grow very fast in the beginning, because guess what? Growing from 10 to 20 is much easier than growing from 100 to 200. But if you have a relatively high churn rate, then this graph will be flattened out. So when we talk to investors, that could be PreSeed Aacademy or angels like me, we not only talk about, discuss with you how fast you're getting customer in, but typically we also quickly say, okay, what is your churn rate? So churn rate is always important, and especially for any type of SaaS business. So here we just have a very simplified profitability per customer for a SaaS business. And that is typically that it costs a lot of money to get your customer in. That goes for both B2B and B2C. That could be paid advertising, it can be PR, it can be salespeople, it can be whatever, but it's expensive to get people in. Typically you try to get people on some kind of subscription, therefore the name SaaS. And over time you try to sell up to them. So hopefully in month 13 and onwards, you get more revenue from the clients. That also means that whether your average customer lifetime is 6 months or 18 months is having a huge impact on your overall profitability. And guess what? That is depending on the churn. So today we're going to discuss how to manage that churn. And I think we have two very exciting guest speakers. We have Morten Poulsen here, who is the founder and CEO of Plytix. He will talk about churn from a data perspective, how to manage that, how do you keep track of these customers, can you in any way find out who is most likely to churn and come to a point where they are not going to churn anymore. Morten will share his very hands-on insights there. After Morten, we have Sado. Sado is the founder and CEO of Superb, and they are also having a subscription business, and that is to the restaurant industry. And guess what? Restaurant industry is hit extremely hard by the Corona crisis. Sado will share his insights, how they basically turn their business upside down and change a lot of parts of their business model due to the Corona crisis. After that, we have a Q&A session about the same topic. Besides Sado, Morten, and myself, we also will be joined by Helle, who is an investment director at PreSeed Ventures. Helle will introduce herself later in the beginning of the Q&A. So the agenda will be like my brief introduction, check. Morten, talk about it from Plytix perspective. Sado, also 15 minutes, and then the Q&A. And we'll stop at 10 sharp. The talk would also be recorded, so we'll send you the link to the talk afterwards. Before we go to Morten, I'll just share, I think, something very important, that is with the Q&A. So in the bottom of your screen, you have the Q&A part, and just fill in any question you might have to either any of us during the panel debate or even before when we talk, and we will then use this as a guide for the Q&A session. You can fill in the questions yourself. You can also upvote other people's questions. So with these few words, I will give the word to Morten. So Morten, the word is yours.
Thanks a million. I'm just gonna share my screen, and while I do that, I'll just correct Nicolaj for pronouncing our name wrong. It's Plytix, short for Product Analytics. Thank you very much, Nicolaj. You should probably have rehearsed this beforehand. Anyways, do you see my screen at the moment? Perfect, thanks a million. Cool, so now that we got the name right, let's just deep dive into what we are, just to give you a bit of background of some of the metrics I'll be talking about later. So we are a B2B software as a service. We are focusing on the retail industry. We basically build a product information management that allows retail companies a central source of truth for all the product information. May that be descriptions, prices, images, videos, and what have you. And from that place, they can actually manage their e-commerce store. They can syndicate their data to marketplaces like Google Shopping, Amazon, Walmart, and what have you. And they can even create catalogs even for print or for web directly from the platform. So we like to call it an all-in-one product information management platform. Just to give you a bit of background, we run on a subscription-based revenue model, freemium model, classical B2B software as a service browser based. And all this information is actually important once we start looking into how we assess churn and what we do to minimize it. We've been around since 2015, and in all honesty, we probably spent the 2 first years running around like headless chicken, basically because I didn't have this graph I'm about to show you. So basically, like many other first-time founders, I think we did the mistake of trying to scale prematurely. And one thing that I've learned as a first-time founder, and I would like to go back in time and tell myself, is that there's a certain journey you need to respect. And that is that you don't have anything. You're not ready to scale unless you can consistently prove that you can retain more than 100% of your revenue, and you have a revenue growth engine that can produce at least 100% growth year on year. If you don't have those two metrics, you don't have product market fit and you don't have go-to-market fit, don't try to hire expensive sales teams and try to scale something that you don't have. So when we finally realized this, we basically set up our own, milestones, our own path to success. And for us, this looked like this. Remember that every business is different. Like, this makes sense for us because of the industry we operate in and because of the market and the type of customers that we're going after. So do not replicate these numbers. Find out what is product market fit and go-to-market fit for you. For us, that meant at least 500K ARR, 100% revenue retention, and 90% customer retention to get to product market fit. And I would like to spend a little time on the concepts of revenue retention and customer retention, because these are not the same thing. Customer retention is quite simple. It's how many customers can you retain, like year over year, measured per month. So basically, if you take April last year, you look at April this year and say, how many of the clients I had in April last year are still client of mine? Revenue retention, on the other hand, and probably a few of you is wondering, how can you have more than 100% retention? You can actually, because revenue retention means, say April last year, you have 10 clients on your platform. Those 10 clients bring in a total of 10,000 annual recurring revenue. You then go fast forward to April this year, and you look at how many of those 10 clients are still clients of yours today. Let's say that 8 out of those clients are still clients, but they now bring in a total of 20,000 ARR. That means that even though you've lost 2 clients from April last year, you have grown and you expanded the remaining 8 to 20,000, which means that you have 200% revenue retention. Okay? Go-to-market fit, I'm not going to spend that much time on that today, because what we're talking about today, or what I'm talking about today, is how we approach revenue and customer retention in Plitix. So basically, you probably all heard about how Facebook, they set up this one rule saying for every new user they got on the platform, they need to get to 30 friends as fast as possible, because Facebook knew that once you have 30 friends, it's very unlikely that you're gonna stop using the platform, because that's the stickiness factor. So we tried to figure out what could be our stickiness factor. And we realized that there's so many use cases of our platform, so we couldn't have like that one 30 friends metric like Facebook had. It was a bit more complex than that. We have both brands and resellers, and the use case is very different from customers to customers. So instead, we basically adopted the concept of lead scoring we knew from sales and marketing, and applied that to something that we call point of minimum churn. So we basically take like desired behavior in our platform, like how many users is on an account, do they have daily activity, how many active syndication, how many brand portal, and so on. And then we give them points. So let's say that you have an account with 3 users and 2 active syndication channels. That basically means you have 9 plus 10 points. And then we basically said, no matter how you're using the platform, once you get to 25 points, that is where we believe that you reach the point of minimum churn. That is where our platform is adding more value than the cost that you're paying for the platform itself. And we're using this metrics, point of minimum churn, in almost everything that we do. We use this to do very accurate revenue forecasts. We do not do the revenue forecast based on, let's say we get 5 or 10% churn. No, we don't do that. We know for every single month, we know which clients are up for renewal, how much they're paying, what are they scoring on the PMC score, and what is the weighted likelihood that they will churn. And we incorporate that when we do the revenue forecasting. We also use the PMC score in our product roadmap. So up until now, like getting to product market fit has been the most important thing for us. So basically everything we do, every feature we plan, we look at what will get us to PMC as fast as possible. And last but not least, the PMC is the main driver for our onboarding process. Because let's face it, every client is different. So what we're doing every time we get a new client, we basically make an individual success plan. We don't do a one size fits all. For every new client, the account executive who closed that client and the account manager who's responsible for onboarding that client will sit together and look at the conversation they've had with the client, and they will determine a success plan, an onboarding plan, where they say, how can we get this client to PMC as fast as possible? And the minute we start doing that is also where we start to seeing our churn drop significantly. This is a cohort over the last 14 months in PreSeed. So basically, you can see something happening around September, October, where we started to really put this into place. Now, this is the most important thing that we steer after. We always create a success plan based on how can we get them onboarded as fast as possible. And especially now, with the COVID, this has become more important than ever. Why? Because the main thing that we can feel, like the main impact in our market during the COVID crisis, is that before COVID, more than 90% of our clients, they were opting for annual deals because, like everybody else, we said pay annually and get 20% discount, which most people actually opt for. But now, in these times, we're so uncertain. Liquidity becomes an issue. Working capital, it becomes an issue for everybody, for us included. But that means a lot of our clients, new clients, but also clients renewing, are now opting for monthly payments, which means the risk of churn is increasing. So we want to make sure that now that they can potentially churn every single month, we need to make sure that they reach the point of minimum churn. We reach a point where the finance department will look at PreSeed and say, the value that this platform is bringing is far exceeding the cost. So we're gonna keep paying for this software. And this is why I think working with PMC is far more valuable, far more important than delaying payments by 6 months or whatever. Because if you cannot add value, then your customers are gonna churn no matter what. If you can add more value than they're paying, and you can measure this, then they will keep paying as long as they're in business. So this has become like a game changer for us when we started to measure the PMC score, because we literally say now with the COVID crisis, we literally made a rule saying for every new client, you need to reach 100% of our new clients need to reach PMC within the first 3 months. Otherwise, we are leaving ourselves vulnerable. So I know that I have 10 minutes, so that's why I kind of rushed through everything, but that is basically what I had for you today. And I don't know how this works with questions. Are we taking questions now or after the talks?
We are taking questions after the talk, Morten, but to any one of you who have a question, just fill it into the Q&A session below, and then we'll take it during the panel discussion.
Fantastic. Anyway, that was it for me. I hope this was helpful, and thank you, Seed Capital, for allowing me to guest speak on your webinar. It's been quite amusing.
Thank you. So, Morten, if you could, yes, exactly. And now I would like to give the word to Sado, who would share his perspective from Superb.
Yeah, thank you so much, and welcome on board, everyone. Let me just share my screen 1 second. Hang on. Let's see if it will work properly. So I guess you can see my screen since Nicolaj is not saying anything now. So perfect. My name is Sero. I come from the company Superb. We are a guest experience management platform for restaurants, and we essentially try to empower the experience that restaurants are offering their guests. Let me see if I can switch properly here. That was a bit fast. Hang on. Like that, yes. So just moving this. Superb is the first real all-in-one platform for restaurants. We call it guest experience management, and it's a convenient platform with all the right tools to work, to find new revenue streams and collect all your data in one place. You want all that data to basically provide every guest with a personalized experience, and I also use it for daily goal setting, weekly goal setting, to be able to drive revenue and increase team performance in a restaurant. As you can see on the infographic on the left side, our platform in practice includes almost all the tools you need to actually run a restaurant today. So it's really an all-in-one, not based only on integrations, but actually on native build features. We are more or less an end-to-end, so we allow you to do anything from taking reservations to do payments in one place. Now, just before I go to my next slide, I wanted to highlight actually what Morten said regarding cohorting your churn. Very, very important from a data perspective, and it's also something that we do a lot. We try to look at the small details also historically, especially in this phase. You know, you could say COVID-19 and restaurants, as Nicolaj highlighted before, it's a really, really bad cocktail. And you guys have probably heard in the news globally that restaurants are in danger. Data from the US says that 30% of that total market will be gone in the next 3 months. So that's pretty crazy. And of course, we've also seen a few of the restaurants we work with go bankrupt. Superb is currently operating in around 30 countries, in over 100 cities around the world, and therefore we have a lot of data that we compare and can see like the different factors that influences churn or bankruptcy, which is another thing we look at. And we're pretty lucky initially to say that the majority of our customers is in Scandinavia, so we have a bit more stability. Now, what I want to give you today is like more actionable insights into what you can actually do when customers stop paying their bills. Maybe you have a billing system where you can see that the invoice has gone into dunning, which means that the card has probably been rejected. It could also be very humble customers that put in cancel requests or request a pause of their contracts. And pausing contracts, from my perspective, historically, is not something I've heard that much about. So what's your strategy? That's the key question. So we call it the Superb C19 strategy. Like ultimately, what I highlight here is something that we always do, right? But of course, they stand more out during a crisis like the COVID one. But one important thing is to essentially, on the customer side, when customers approach you and they have problems, try to show the same loyalty that you expect from them, right? Prioritize to keep them for free instead of letting them go. And I'm specifically highlighting this not only to avoid a bad churn metric, but also because, you know, times will change and customers will start paying again. And one thing that we felt was okay was it's okay to pause contracts in this period and help your customers to show that sympathy. And the last point is be super clear in your communication with your team and your customers also, and show leadership. Do not hesitate to take tough decisions. One of the first things we did was actually send out a statement to our customers. We did not only send like this classic CEO statement, but we actually tried to be in personal communication with them at all time. You know, at this stage, we are still a startup and we don't have thousands of customers. So it's easy to just get in touch and see how you can help. Then you need to understand your customers and show some empathy. That's what we did. We really put our mind into this industry. It's restaurants, right? They don't have that much liquidity to be able to sustain paying their bills for the next months, and that's, you probably also will see the after effect of that in the next 6 months, that a lot of restaurants will bow under, right? And then one key strategy was that we set ourselves as a resource instead of something static that do not provide value, right? What does that mean in practice? In practice, it basically means that depending on your market, of course, there can be different dynamics if you work in enterprise. But when you work with the restaurant industry or hospitality and so on, you know, in general, any other business where the customer is good at their job, then they actually expect somebody to actually come in and instruct them and help them. So one of the goals, or one of the key strategies for Superb was to become the expert in this area. We wanted to show them how technology and software could actually help them through these times. So I'll get to that in a few seconds. And then we try to adapt to the new normal. We call it the new normal experience, right? What we did was we tried to review our pricing grid. Our pricing grid is essentially just our pricing packages, right? And what they contain and what the pricing is and so on. We want to understand our customer behavior, to really put our mind into the industry and their thoughts. And that's also why we called them up and tried to see what they were nervous for, to basically be able to answer and have some data on what's next for them in the industry. Focus on actions that can help you move the needle. Now, in this time, company traction is everything, and you need to work harder during this period. So you can imagine that, or I can actually be super honest with you and say that the last 3 months might have been the most busy and toughest time in our company, at least for Superb, and in my startup life also. And that's just because you need to remember that when, I'm not sure we will experience this again, but we experienced that, you know, there's a lot of people are sitting at home, they don't know what to do, and you know, there's a lot of room online to basically build a voice. So you need to use that opportunity to strike. And then to get back to my point about offering yourself as a resource, look at your product and see if you can tweak anything, just a little, to offer it as a lifeline to customers. So what Superb did was we launched we had a feature that would allow you to sell tickets, do prepayments, and so on and so forth. We tweaked that into a restaurant takeaway solution for not only delivery but also pre-orders. And we slashed the commissions that you've heard a lot about in the news, that you've seen on these takeaway apps. So basically, that was like a way to show some commitment to help restaurants. And that will pay off, by the way. Finally, be more present than ever before. The ones that are sleeping now are actually in the past. And I guarantee you that the companies that you compete with that are basically have gone home on salary compensation, or are basically just using this as a long vacation, they will be in the past. And you will see that. Because for Superb, we have a lot of local competitors, but also international competitors, and they've been super busy slashing 25, 30, 40% of their workforces. It is tough when you have between 500 and 5,000, 10,000 employees. So you know, if you consider that, it's not that bad. But even like the smaller players that we're competing with, you know, I see this as an opportunity window for us to shake up the market and stand out, right? And then as a CEO, you need to stand out like never before. If you truly have a vision that you want people to follow, you also need to be the voice of the industry. And what's better than being the voice of the industry when everyone is listening and when everyone needs someone to follow? And that's what Superb did. So if you go to our social media, you'll see what we did. We launched a podcast. We call it the Experience Matters podcast, to basically introduce live talks with restaurants that allows you to get some expert advice on how to handle the current situation. And we continue to develop that in the aftermath of the COVID-19. And then one thing that is super important, imagine for the first time in 10 years, the marketing space is completely open. And you have 5 minutes of fame. You actually have many more minutes of fame, but not everyone, but the majority, look at your market, the majority of companies are pausing all the activities. They're pausing all the social media, their paid marketing spend and so on. This is the time for you to shine. And this is what we do. So what Superb did was we actually doubled our spend online, and we were more aggressive than ever before. So what we did in practice was, these are quite big points, all of them. Sorry. We launched a free version of our platform. That was pretty impactful. So Superb's platform is, as an all-in-one, is already pretty cheap for restaurants, considering that they pay around 10,000 euros per year just to get started with all the other systems which are fragmented. With Superb, you've been paying around 199 euros per month as a classic SaaS subscription. Now, we've always been, on top of that, as a company, we are actually a payment facilitator. So we have also been driving revenue through the payments running through our platform. That took a few years to become that, of course, so it's not that easy, but it basically allowed us to look at our pricing grid and say, you know what, we can actually pivot a bit. Just like we launched the takeaway feature from our normal features, we also looked at how could we be flexible in terms of pricing. So we actually introduced a free version of our platform. Why is that? That's because we don't want to be naive. This crisis is not just we looked at the financial crisis in 2008, right? And we looked at our market and we compared it with the current crisis. And we said, well, post crisis, restaurants financially will also have a tough time. So it doesn't make sense to sit there being naive, thinking that customers will want to pay in June again, right? Then I wrote, go check our social media platforms. And that's just highlighting the fact that we were more present than ever before. We launched maybe 4 times as much content as we normally would do per month, right? Then one very important step was we started doing more financial planning, more intensive financial planning to basically plan out the next 12 months. No matter which stage you are in as a startup or company, unless you, of course, are running your business alone, you need to sit down and figure out how can you actually either cut down or raise money or try to use some of the compensation elements to have runway for the next 12 months. For Superb, we are a venture case, so we are looking at raising a Series A in the next 12 months. Then we actually reached out to the market to help, basically just offering our resources. It doesn't have to be in terms of product features, but also if they need advice or guidelines for how to do things. For our specific segment, they're not so business centric, right? They're all about the experience and their craft. So we could actually give them a perspective to help them or give them some kind of network to somebody that could help them do marketing for them in the aftermath. And then I don't know why it's there 2 times, but we pivoted features in our product to help. So just for the last slide, for Superb, our strategy is very simple. I hope I'm going to be quoted for this in the future. It is strike now, scale fast, and that's very much connected to being aggressive now when everyone is sleeping, right? So we see Superb as the lion that just woke up. So we will offer restaurants within our segment worldwide our platform for free for the next 12 months to support them, build sympathy on the market, or build sympathy for the market and the customers, and basically to establish a leading position in the market, going from SaaS to fintech. And we do this, we offering a free product, a free pricing is also very dangerous because you can cannibalize your current revenue. And we look at that too. Of course, you need to take that into consideration. And that pushes me back to financial planning. You need to ask yourself, how are you going to, what's the strategy for, coping with the different risks that you have? If you cannibalize your own revenue, which basically means in practice that, you offer a free version, half of your current revenue and customers will want to jump to the free version. You need to, of course, be able to handle that you lose half of your revenue from one day to another. For us, it's a matter of being able to list down the milestones and try to hit them to reach Series A by end of year. Just a small note to that, investors, if you're an investor case, they also take the market, the new normal market experience into consideration. So it's actually okay to adjust your metrics. It's okay to say, for Superb, for example, okay, we are not only focusing on MR now, we were only doing that before, now we focus on customer count. If we can get customer count up and prove that customers are willing to buy our product for free even, then we can convert them later. Those metrics show something else. It shows that your product is still more critical even in the time of crisis. And then we are, one key element is we are aligning our team efforts and continue hiring to hit targets. So this is part of the aggressive strategy. We don't want to just stay at home and wait for things to be better because we need to make them become better. And then my last point, which I'm super excited for, is that we actually canceled our lease for our office. We have a very nice office with room for 25 people here in Vesterbro in Copenhagen. But we saw, an opportunity here, right? An opportunity for not getting, people infected. No, I'm joking. But we saw an opportunity to actually increase productivity and continue the good signs we've seen the last months. And that's individual for different companies, but for us, that's a point I wanted to highlight. So that's from me. All of this, I think, is well connected to Morten's perspective. Look at the data and also consider your market to get through this properly.
Thank you very much, Sado. If you can stop sharing your screen, so we just perfect. Yeah. We start now going to the Q&A. Before we go to the Q&A, I will just give the word for Helle to let her introduce herself for 1 second. Helle, could you tell a little bit about what you do?
Yes, my name is Helle, and I'm an investment director at PreSeed Ventures, where I've been investing in startups for the last 6 years. And with regards to today's topic, I gotta say I love how Morten and Pletix can predict churn by scoring customer usage. They've come a long way since I first invested in them in 2015. But if you're not quite at that level yet with regard to customer usage and measuring, I think at the moment the core priority right now is not to lose customers, or at least lose as few customers as possible during this crisis. And here I gotta say the most important thing is not to wait for the customers to contact you. Do like Superb and Sado, the team has done. Reach out to the customers, get that one-to-one dialogue, and make sure that you know the situation of each and every one of your customers.
Thank you. Morten, when we go to the Q&A, could you share your screen again? Because one of the highest ranked question is actually the one with your cohort analysis. And I also think it's very important. So if you could explain that, just basically spend 1 minute explaining how to read that slide. That would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize. I went a bit fast on this one. And it's a very good question. So basically, what you can see here is the number of clients we actually closed because I graded out. But
you have to share your screen, or is it only me?
I'm so sorry. I thought I was.
Now, perfect.
Okay, perfect. We're going to start over. So basically, what you obviously can see is this column right here, who actually indicate how many clients we closed in a given month. So the way to read this is take January. We can take January this year. We closed X amount of new clients. In month 1, which is basically February. In February, how many clients of those, let's say 10 clients we closed in January, how many of those have already reached point of minimum churn? In this case, it's 60%. Month 2, which is March, how many have now reached point of minimum churn? And then April, we're still there. So basically what this shows you is a quick overview of all the new clients you get in. How many of those have already reached PMC, and how well are you doing your onboarding process? Are you structuring your success plans, according to getting them to that point as quick as possible? Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. So basically, Morten, if I should read that, then I'll go to February this year and see the customers you got in February this year, 83% of them in April reached the point of minimum churn, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe lead to that, and also they'll open up to Helle and Sado. But maybe start with you, Morten. So now you've done this in real life, and as Helle said, you are much more advanced than 5 years ago. If you should advise an early stage startup on how to do this, with the limited resources they have and limited information they have, how would you start from scratch setting up such a system? What would you do if you should advise an early stage startup?
So honestly, what we did in 2017, after we realized that we created a monster with a lot of early traction, but zero loyalty whatsoever. What we did at that point is we actually, fired, 70% of our clients. We also unfortunately had to fire 70% of our people because we had runway for 4 months. But then we did what we should have done in the beginning. We focused on the product that we wanted to build. We focused on the actual people that we wanted to serve. So we were left with like 30 clients throughout the entire 2018, and we worked with them intensively to build a system for them. So instead of getting, swept away by and maybe interest from Apple or Intersport and start building features that they requested in the process, we start looking at who are the clients we want to serve. And for us, that was small and medium-sized businesses in the retail industry. So we basically took from different verticals within the industry. We just nailed down those 30 clients we wanted to work with, and we started working with them intensively throughout all of 2018 to really get to the product market fit, where we knew, hey, now we're actually adding more value to these 30 clients than ever. And then 2019 was all about go-to-market fit. It was all about, now how do we get more of these 30 clients? How do we build a growth engine, a sustainable growth engine where the unit economics were actually profitable, where we could actually measure that the cost of getting a client in would be paid back in less than 12 months. So if I had to start over, I would start by closing a beta with like a handful or 30 clients that you define as your sweet spot. Work with them, build a product for them, and then get more of those clients. And then in terms of building up your PMC score, I saw one of those questions. It's basically just in that phase where you try to get to product market fit, track everything you do. Like we use a software called Pendo, where you can literally, without much development, you don't have to develop all those tracking mechanisms yourself. This software, and there's also full story and what have you. You can literally set up certain things, and you can see the behavior of your customers on your platform. And I think the main takeaway is, once you start tracking these things, quantify it. So what we did was, we had no idea that a user was worth 3 points. So we just started giving it 1 point. We gave everything 1 point. Once you start tracking it and you start seeing insights, then you adjust your point system. And we're not even set on the point system yet. But the most important thing is, once you start tracking behavior. Sorry. The important thing is that you track certain things, like people on your account, certain activities, desired behavior, and you give them a score. And you basically start by quantifying them. If you don't know the score, just give them any score. You can always adjust it over time. Sorry, that was a long answer to a short question. I apologize.
Thanks. Helle, maybe you can share some of your experience from across your portfolio. So basically, what do you see as successful strategies? You mentioned that overall people had to reach out to customers, and basically do that before they cancel the contract. What are some of the good tactics you see, or anything that you've seen worked or doesn't work?
I mean, I gotta say, we have portfolio companies that have 5 customers, and we have portfolio companies that have a lot of customers, like for example, Plitix. So, I mean, if you have 5 customers, it's all about the one-to-one dialogue. You know your customers very intensely, and you know their problems, and you know their challenges during this period of time. But of course, I agree with all the things that Morten said, but it's also things that you can do once you've learned a lot, which he has during the last 5 years. I mean, in hindsight, it's clear what you had to do, but there is also quite a lot of trial and error learning by doing also in the beginning. So you gotta have some of that learning under your nails, so to say. But of course, it depends a lot on the level you're at and the number of customers you have, etc., and also the usage that you actually have of your product. And you are, of course, very fortunate if you have the usage that you have, where you can actually measure it as well as Plitix can. Yeah, so I gotta say it's different from company to company. What we see is the right strategy, but definitely it's all about being customer centric right now, and maybe move some of the salespeople to the customer success team in order to really focus on that usage and dialogue with your customers, and track everything, as Morten said also.
Perfect.
Can I just add?
Sure.
I just wanted to add a practical point, because I remember when I was younger, I was looking at these presentations, and I tried to also understand how could I actually do these cohorts, right? One of the very important things we did a few years ago was we got a billing system. There's a lot of them out there, and then we integrate that billing system to a monitoring system like Profitwell or ChartMogul or Baremetrics, right? And that would give you like the cohort analysis and show you in depth what it's based on, just to make it easy for you before you jump into Excel sheets. There's free tools out there, right?
Good point. Maybe we can share. I think Morten also mentioned the one of the tools that he used. So basically, in the follow-up email to all of you, maybe we can share a few of these name of software so you can check them out yourself. So here's a question, Sado, for you. You mentioned that a little bit regarding the price reduction, how you think that will impact your long-term pricing. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit of that? Do you think there's a risk that when the crisis is over, that it'll be very, very hard for you to increase prices again? So could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, to be super clear, we tried to, we didn't just like introduce the free version without adapting the other pricing options or the other price packages to the free version, right? So, when you launch a free pricing, you also need to try to build up the pricing grid so that the customer eventually wants to convert to a paid package, because ultimately introducing a free version right now is a way to help the market and get a lot of new customers on board and so on. But the important KPI for that will be to convert customers, right? And for that, I think I'm not so worried about it. Time will tell. But if our product has the actual value that customers say that it has, they will convert, right?
Yes. So here's a question to you, Morten. You mentioned how you try to now track it more, for short-term contracts. But have you experienced any increase in churn, or basically what customers value? You mentioned one of the points was the shorter contract, but could you elaborate a little bit about what you have experienced during the last 3 months?
Yeah, I can actually, because obviously, as I said, we always use this PMC to navigate and do revenue forecasting. When a thing like this happens, obviously you have to adjust everything, and we actually adjusted our PMC score when that happened, because now there was an external factor we need to consider. Honestly, we've been very fortunate. I think this crisis that we're seeing is only the beginning, and I think it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. I think we operate in the retail business, so compared to Superb, we are like third or even fourth link. Superb is first link. The first thing that goes in this crisis is travel and hospitality. As an effect of people getting unemployed, the next thing that's going to happen is probably retail, and then the third link is this software to retail. So I think we will see some churn as a result of companies getting going bankrupt or losing a lot of their revenue, but retail hasn't been hit yet. Quite the opposite. Right now it seems like everybody wants to sell their products online, which is quite fortunate if you're a software that helps people sell online. So for us, it's too early to say anything about churn, but I'm not going to be naive. I think that, as I said, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and at some point this crisis is going to affect almost every single industry, including the retail. So what Sado and Superb is seeing now, we will see probably in 6 to 9 months, and then I'll be very happy to have those slides as Sado so we can implement some of those things. So no, as of now, we've actually had the best month ever in April, and before that, the best month ever in March. But time will tell, and I'm sure we will see some churn, but it hasn't happened yet.
Helle, maybe I can give that to your perspective, because again, it varies. Do you basically share the viewpoint of Morten that some industries are hit short term, but others haven't seen the yet? What do you see across your portfolio? Do you see huge variations about where some have been hit like more positively than negatively, or can you share some insights there?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to what happens long term, we can only speculate, of course, none of us knows, but I think Morten is right that I guess every industry will be hit, but we do have various degrees of how much our portfolio companies have been hit. We have one who's working with physical retail, hit very hard, everything stopped from one day to another. We have another one who's working with edifying games for kids, hit in another way, in a positive way, and they've had the best months ever. So yes, we do have some who has been positively impacted in the short run, and also the ones who have been negatively impacted in the short run. And then we have the ones that are the majority, which is they still have their clients. We're not sure yet how is it gonna develop, and how is the usage gonna change with regards to their products, etc.
Thanks. Sado, here's a more specific question to you. How are you doing the outreach? And basically, it's maybe more broader. What's your go-to-market strategy? So how are you getting in contact with these restaurant owners? And have that changed during the corona, or is it basically the same? Is it sales? Is it outbound? Is it inbound? Is it sales? Is it marketing?
So that's a good question. What we saw was, if I take you through the timeline, is in March when we hit like the maybe the peak, or in end of March, we got 100% of our customers through inbound channels, right? And that was where we turned up the paid marketing budget and activities. In April, we saw a huge increase in outbound. So around 70% of new sales came from outbound.
And when you say outbound, is it paid social media? Is it search marketing?
So inbound is everything organic and social media, and social media spend. Outbound is essentially cold calling, referrals, and so on, right? So we have salespeople that try to reach the customers. We looked at it in stages, right? So Morten also came with this perspective on the different links, and if you go in depth, you'll also see that usually people, when you have these crises, they behave in a certain way. And one thing we could see first was they tried to cut everything unnecessary. That was like the first step. So we looked at different countries in our perspective, and we talked to customers and asked them like, how are you guys going to respond to that? We send out surveys, and usually when you send out a survey, you're like, will people actually spend time replying to this? And we were like overwhelmed. We got 80% responses back from sending it out to around 500 people, which was great, right? And we used that data to try to figure out like, what's the next step? And then we try to adapt our inbound, outbound efforts. So one thing that we did in April was that we turned up, which we have not been doing a lot before because we don't want to make people mad in this respect. And we turned up our outbound outreach efforts. So we did cold email campaigns to restaurants all over Scandinavia, with a personal message from me where I basically explained them that, how the world looks like, gave them a lot of the data that we have from all the restaurants and the experience from the 2008 financial crisis and how the aftermath would look like. And we use that argumentation to basically plant a seed. And this is what we saw in March. We send out a lot of campaigns in March, also in April. We plant a seed, and then we see the after effect of that in May. So this month, we're halfway through the month. We're doing records in sales. We're doing more sales than ever before in the lifetime of the company. So it's we're very attentive to the data, and then we just try anything, just test. We try to hustle us through different marketing approaches and cold calling and so on to see what works.
So a final question to all three of you will be around the personal branding, what you have done, how you think it will act. Maybe start with Helle, the investor here. What do you think, does that work for the investors? Do you think that, again, what do you see across the portfolio about, I think Sedo said the most about how they really try to have a voice in this industry. What is your view on that?
Yes, I think of course that's important, and it's always important to be kind of a thought leader within your industry and be regarded as a thought leader. But I think also this crisis have actually made every single one of us, and also every single startup, really look at their costs, really look at, is this the optimal way of running my business? How can I be completely sure that my product adds value to my clients so I don't lose them, etc. And it's not like people didn't do that before, but sometimes it's also a positive thing to get a big hit in the head and actually have a good look at yourself from a really critical perspective, saying, okay, how can I actually run my business in the most optimal way, and how can I be the best partner for my customers? And I think that's also one thing that comes out of a crisis, is that everyone really pays attention to this And I can see that both Sedu and Morten are working with this also, and all of my portfolio companies are working with this. So sometimes it can be a good thing, and I think we can become stronger after with this perspective.
Morten, your final comments on this?
Yeah, on the personal branding, first of all, I have to agree with Helle. You need to, especially now when I think most VCs are probably sitting and taking a more waiting approach to investing. I think like finding a way to streamline and make your organization lean is evident. On the personal branding thing, I personally don't do it. I don't think that anyone should be above the company. We have a very strong culture, and that's the one we would like to promote. We promote politics, and we like politics and the people and the culture to be that thought leader. It shouldn't be founder driven. So that's a rule and policy I have. I also talked to your colleague earlier who asked me if I wanted to share on social media, the link to this, which I had to be honest, I think it's against our nature. We don't self-promote. We add value also on social media. We don't brag. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but no, I don't do any personal.
Very honest answer. Yes, cool.
Yeah.
Sedu, final 30 seconds.
Yeah, I partly agree with a lot of the things that Morten says about not bragging and so on, but I definitely think that it depends on which type of industry you work in and which type of customers you have. For Superb, we work in the restaurant industry, and it's very customer, like our sales and marketing approach is very relationship based. And digging into those types of customers, we also know what they would like to see, what they would like to hear, and they would like to follow leadership on the market. So, for Superb at least, we are putting my face out there, to actually show them there's somebody they can connect to Superb, building category defining companies like we try to do. GXM is a new category that we try to introduce, and in order to educate the market about that, they need some kind of anchor point and someone that can continue to remind them. So that's our strategy at least. Yeah.
Cool. I think that leads very well to the next event here. So PreSeed is hosting a talk about how basically to navigate this funding from a VC perspective here on May 28th. It's normally an event that is only open or closed only for the portfolio companies, but it has been changed into an open virtual event. You can sign up at PreSeed Aacademy. It's May 28th. And finally, on May 26th, we're continuing our open door events. If you want to discuss anything, again, it's not about pitching for money, it's about getting feedback from either me or one of the portfolio managers from PreSeed. You can apply for a 30-minute slot, where we're basically just sharing our very honest opinion. So with these words, we're basically done. We try to keep the time. It's 10 o'clock. So from PreSeed Ventures, myself, and especially all the guest speakers we have here, thanks a lot. We will set up and follow-up emails to you, and hopefully also with links to some of the resources that both Morten and Sedu mentioned. So thank you.
Pleasure. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.